because we're gonna watch
Hey,
the
Internet,
cancel
time
culture
for a
one,
quick
because let's just get into this.
rant. Because I've noticed that a lot of people still, unfortunately, don't really understand the difference between cancel culture and consequence culture. And
I've never heard of consequence culture, but consequences culture. Yeah, it would be different if you do something that's obviously horrible versus you getting canceled for something that you didn't do.
See a common argument where people will say, oh, it's consequence culture when it's against someone you don't like, and cancel culture when it's against someone you like. And then they'll just kind of sit there thinking they've added something profound to the conversation by pointing out some horrible hypocrisy.
It's not consequence culture if the person who gets canceled didn't do anything that's objectively bad, right? Or like abhorrent. I'm assuming that's what the consequence culture term means, but I don't know. I'll have to see this video.
When you understand what's really going on, you'll realize it's not hypocritical at all. So I'll be explaining why this is a middle ground fallacy, starting with a simple story. Let's say that you have two people living in a small town, John and Bob. And John and Bob, they have a bit of a history together. They don't really get along. They live on the same street, and they regularly get into little stupid verbal disagreements. But one day things go a bit too far. John accuses Bob of stealing $10,000 from him. And just
Damn, John's banking. He's rolling, guys. Does he work at like a tech company or something?
And ultimately the two find themselves in court. Now, let's just say that John manages to win this case, resulting in Bob having to pay back the money he stole and loses his job and reputation in the process, and has to pay an additional fine on top of it for all the time wasted in court.
I love these AI images. They're like the peak art ever. It's amazing.
But despite all this happening, Bob still professes his innocence. And, well, after a few months of digging, evidence is unearthed that John, in fact, staged the whole thing. Video evidence from John...
So John staged the whole thing?
His neighbors showed that John had taken the money out of his account and simply buried it in his own backyard, and then framed Bob for the whole theft that never actually occurred. So it was all a bunch of vindictive crap because John didn't like something that Bob said a long time ago. And so then what happens is they find themselves back in court, and pretty clear-cut, objective evidence is then shown that John is in fact the one who's in the wrong, and thus the judge is about to hand down his sentence of a very hefty fine on John for wasting everyone's time and bearing false testimony, scamming the system, and just in general being a lying victim-playing jerk. But before the judge can hand down his sentence, the village idiot then stumbles into the courtroom and says, "Hey guys, don't you know that both sides are bad? It was wrong when we had Bob pay a fine, so it's..."
The hell is this guy talking about? Not Minta's wife, but this hypothetical village ass.
It's obviously wrong that John is now paying a fine. If we were to force John to pay a fine, that would make us hypocrites.
How does that make you a hypocrite if he's the scammer? He's the one who scammed Bob. How the fuck? If you're the scammer, then getting consequences isn't hypocrisy. If you're the one being framed, if you're the framer, if you're the one framing somebody, how is it hypocrisy for the judge to, then punish you for something that you did? Of course you should be punished if you did something that's illegal. That's just common sense.
Why is it the village idiot is wrong here? Why is this not hypocritical at all?
Because John was the one that was framing Bob. It's obvious.
Well, in this story, it's kind of obvious when you just think about it for 2 seconds or so. Because as it turns out, there's a difference between punishing someone who's guilty and punishing someone who's innocent.
That's what I'm saying. Here's the thing. I don't think we should be being canceled for, saying what's on our minds. We shouldn't be doing that. What you should be, canceled for, if you do something abhorrent, say that, a heinous action is okay, or a death threat, that's not okay.
The entire point of justice, at its core, is in order to ensure that this is what happens.
Well,
at least
they want
when
to
it's done
defund
properly.
the police also
the point is
people, so, they're totally against that.
Right or wrong. And of course, in cases like the one I just gave, if the courts get it wrong, it is thus entirely reasonable to reverse the decision. Now, of course, the example I just gave is more of a run-of-the-mill, typical property rights issue. Someone was accused of stealing. But of course,
it still applies, though.
Necessarily everything that is bad for society can be called a property crime. There are things like defamation and lying, which, while not necessarily stealing from somebody, is still kind of a jerk thing to do.
I think defamation and lying would be... I think that's more than a jerk thing to do, because you're lying against reality. Ultimately, I think you're lying before God. That's just my belief. Of course, not everybody believes in God, and I'm not going to force you.
Issues like that, that's where physical removal comes into play. It is entirely reasonable for people to disassociate and shame and criticize those who are caught lying. And for similar reasons as the story I just gave, it is not reasonable to physically remove someone based on information that isn't true. It is this, the difference between truth and nonsense, that's the difference between cancel culture and consequence.
Well, yeah, but the woke types just continue to blur the lines between those two. Like, they call the truth a lie, and they call the lie the truth. This is what I believe Jesus meant. This is what I believe Jesus meant. Jesus basically, I think, prophesied the woke people. He said that people would call good evil and evil good. That is what Jesus said. Also, Christ said, know the truth, and the truth will set you free. Well, if Jesus said that the good will be called the evil, and the evil will be called the good, then he's also saying that people will say that the lie is the truth, and that the truth is the lie. That's what's happening.
This culture is
in today's
identified.
Culture, we could see it. They go around on the internet. This is true.
People being dogpiled and criticized online and canceled and whatnot for BS made-up accusations they are either innocent of or are things that shouldn't even be considered wrong by any functioning, rational person, well, that's bad. But when a person actually is guilty of wrongdoing, such as the case of getting caught in a defamation attempt based on BS and demonstrably fallacious arguments, well then, they deserve the consequences coming their way, and that's a good thing. Or to put it very simply, the difference between cancel culture and consequence culture is innocent and guilty.
So I did get this right at the start then. Cancel culture, consequence culture. One, you shouldn't be punished for something you didn't do. The other is you should be punished if you did something grave, or an illegal act that was genuinely horrible.
Guilty people get their comeuppance, that is a good thing. When innocent people are attacked and slandered for things that are not real, that is a bad thing. It's actually not a difficult concept to understand at all.
It's not, but the woke people will make it difficult. I heard this saying, stupid people make things, difficult, and smart people make things simple. I don't know if it applies to this video, but it may be true, so there may be times that I've been stupid in my life. Well, obviously, I've been stupid. All of us have. But, you can make, the woke people will turn something easy, like gender, and then they will make it something, really, difficult to explain.
Let's take a step back and go into the context of this little post right here. So you're saying it's okay to do this because the guys we don't like do it? Doesn't that make us no better than them? Well, this kind of misses the point. It's not about liking the person or disliking the person. It's about truth and nonsense. And those of you familiar with my channel,
Okay, so disliking the person, because it's all based on feelings, right? It's all based on feelings. That's what it is. Because the woke mindset is not based on logic. It's not based on logos. It's entirely based on emotion and tangent rather than rational reasoning.
With my previous video, familiar with the recent happenings it was largely about, you might recognize this.
Oh yeah, with Kersey stuff. She got banned.
Post as being in response to the whole VTubergate controversy. Here's a quick TLDR.
VTubergate? Are we going to call what?
Lens, a Vice journalist, wrote a hit piece on a VTuber known as Kirsche, and tons of
Kirsche, that's how you pronounce.
Vice readers ended up dogpiling on her as
okay, so hit piece was written on Kirsche.
Result.
I don't
and
know
of course, there was
the Kirsche drama, guys. Let me know. In the comments if you would like to.
Just one tiny problem with this. The article was complete nonsense. In fact, it's a pretty easy contender for the absolute stupidest hit piece written by a mainstream journalist this year so far. For those who missed it, you can understand it by a good old-fashioned attempt at...
the context of, the basics of what happened in the story, because I don't know much about Kirsche. I mean, I know she's a VTuber. I've only recently probably watched VTubers grown on me because Leaf
defamation by fallacy, where it proceeded to commit a Gatling gun of demonstrably
I may have grown an interest in VTubers. I don't know.
Valid arguments. I mean, just in the headline alone, it had loaded questions based on straw.
This is great art, by the way. Basically, what I'd be talented to make that art.
And arguments. And
one of her fans is a bona fide Nazi. A bona fide. A good, faithful Nazi. Wow. Just call everyone a Nazi. That's what I do all the time. Whenever someone disagrees with me, I just do that. Because it's the easiest thing to do.
The guilt by association.
The Great Replacement theory. Oh, fuck. I don't want the Great Replacement.
fallacy. You know, based on the good old-fashioned, you retweeted this person, therefore that means you must agree with every single political position and every single opinion that person has or ever will hold. And then the article itself was just blatant moral
argumentum ad Hitlerum. Bro, what is it? Bro, why is this built like the freaking catechism? Argumentum ad Hitlerum. GamerSupps is in hot water with many VTuber fans due to the behavior of one particular creator working with the company Mythic Talents, Kirsey Everstal, an anime fox girl with a knack for sharing alt-right talking points. Oh my gosh, guys. Alt-right talking points, guys. She's a Nazi. She's insane. Kirsey has landed herself in a controversy online due to her right-wing beliefs. At this point, it begs question whether GamerSupps will one day pull the plug on a VTuber for good. Like, what the fuck is this? Now we're going after people because of their political beliefs. This has happened for a long time.
Fallacies and woke pandering with a shamelessly unveiled attempt to get Kirsey removed from her GamerSupps sponsor based on said fallacies.
Yeah, screw whoever wrote that argument.
Things like cherry-picking by equating the opinions of your painfully average IQ Reddit midwit who thinks he is a genius because of his sociology degree with the rest of the population, along with, of course, your typical argument.
No, everyone I don't like is Hitler.
Ad Hitlerum arguments that appeals to said Redditor's emotional and political bias. It then continued with a straw-man argument against the Great Replacement theory, where recognition of demographic trends somehow makes someone a white supremacist, which is obvious.
So now Kirsey is a white supremacist. That's great. Now she's a white supremacist because she disagrees with the Great Replacement theory, which, to me, the Great Replacement theory is, I think, bullshit and will not help anybody. So apparently I'm a white supremacist.
Blatant misrepresentation, again designed to pander to the woke schools who don't bother to educate themselves on the difference between simply recognizing demographic shifts in data alongside political incentives and believing in insane Elders of Zion tier conspiracy theories. Because, you know, there's actually kind of a big difference between the two. And this idea that simply recognizing demographic shifts counts as a conspiracy
the Earth is flat
theory, when that data comes from the United States Census Bureau, you know, that's kind of not a valid argument. And of course, it continues on with the usual half-truths of misquoting Kirsey on her views, claiming she generalized the entire trans community, but in reality, Kirsey used the words or and most, which means it was not a generalization.
Okay, so she said most then. So when did that translate to all, according to this journalist? Because most doesn't mean all.
Along with further moralistic fallacies, further misquoting and misrepresentations of arguments, further representing data such as cherry-picking police statistics, doubling down, of course, on the whole being an attempt to get Kirsey to lose her sponsors based on fallacious claims, and of course
that's such an asshole move to do. Like distort someone else's words, who's innocent, by the way, and then take away her get her sponsors taken away, essentially trying to ruin her career and everything that she's worked for. Because these people work their asses off, which is just an asshole move to do. Like, how much of dick do you have to be to, like, go after someone's livelihood?
Typical partisan hack argument of, this person is right-wing, therefore they are lay bad. Everything about the hit piece was designed and crafted specifically to rile up the type of people who lack critical thinking skills into attacking a person that Anna doesn't like. The whole thing was a lie. And of course, at first it worked. Kirsey started receiving tons of hate mail and negative reactions and comments as a result of the hit piece.
Well, of course, because we trust journalists today. We trust these random journalists who we don't even know if they're even qualified in what they do. And if they are qualified, do we even know that they're actually common sense smart?
Until, of course, many denizens of the internet, specifically those who do not lack basic critical thinking skills, decided to actually read the hit piece, only to discover that, as I just showed you, the whole thing was a steaming load. And so, naturally, the bulk of the internets ended up instead turning on Anna as people proceeded to rip the article apart, exposing Anna as a liar, giving her negative comments, ultimately resulting in total Foxu victory as Vice took the articles down.
Foxu victory, let's go. I'm happy for Kirsey that she got the victory. I don't know much about the story again, but I'm at least happy that that she was secured.
Out of fear of being hit with a defamation lawsuit that they would have a pretty good chance of losing, considering, again, the article was a steaming load. But of course, the real problem here is the people who came in and pulled the whole lay both sides bad, guys, and that is wrong for the same reason and concept as the hype.
Of course it's wrong, because you can be judged, you can give consequences to somebody who objectively did something bad, but you shouldn't be giving consequences to somebody who didn't do anything bad. It's biblical, I think, the consequences culture and cancel culture, because God will give to you what we sow. So we see examples like in scripture of how God gives consequences to those who do wicked. Like with Babylon, Israel was taken into captivity because they were disobeying God. But you had other times also where Israel was also being oppressed, and other times like, the Exodus story. In those cases, they didn't deserve the consequences because they were innocent. They were made slaves by King Ramses. So it's like, it's not a double standard.
Really insane to imply that it is hypocritical to like it when a guilty person receives
apparently they don't know what that term means, honestly, because they're a bunch of hypocrites. I mean, a lot of them are. Okay, a lot of them are. People on the right, non-woke people can be hypocrites too. I've been a hypocrite at times. Okay, I'm still hypocritical in many ways. So I don't think we should be seeing ourselves as morally better than the woke toids, the woke cult. But it seems like a lot of like the degeneracy is coming from the woke
weapons, and not like it when an innocent person gets crapped on for something they didn't actually do. I mean, unless you think that there's just no difference between lying and telling the truth, that's not hypocrisy at all. I
mean, according to the left, there might as well be no difference. Because if we're gonna like go on this thing about, oh, reality is subjective, your truth, my truth, then really there is no truth. There is no lie. It's just a bunch of slop that we make up, okay? And because this is, again, you don't have to believe in God. I'm just saying from my personal experience, this is why Christ said to judge the people based on their works. When the apostles said, Lord, how will we know who is the false prophet and who is the Antichrist? Jesus responded to them, for you will know that they are wolf in sheep's clothing, because you will know them by the fruits. In other words, Jesus is saying that you will know who is being truthful and who's lying, depending on the works that they do. And we see this time and time again throughout the Bible. We see this throughout history. So it's really depending on the fruits. Those are the signs. Jesus also encourages us to critically think, because he, in the same books, in the same gospels, he says, beware of wolves in sheep's clothing, who come to you as ravenous wolves, but as wolves in sheep's clothing. You will know them by their fruits. And Jesus said to test every spirit. It not just like spirit as in, the demonic and supernatural, but I believe he was saying to test every soul or every belief. Christ did not say to just blindly accept anything. He said to test it by the words of truth.
When you recognize the differences between guilty and innocent. And it's also further really important to understand that this isn't even really a left or right partisan thing. Well, it may be the case.
I don't think it is left or right, because at the end of the day, it really all comes down to the truth, I think. I think this whole thing with like the right and the left, this whole fight, ultimately I think it's useless. I'm not trying to hate on either side. I still consider myself technically more right-leaning, conservative. I kind of would want to be center, have nuance. Hopefully I can learn a lot. And people like Mentis Wave, I think, do a good explanation. I'm probably going to watch more of his content, but it's like, why can't we just stop doing sides? Like, stop choosing what is right and what is wrong based on sides. Just choose what is right, what is wrong, based on the truth. Why can't we do that?
In this particular example that this happened, that yes, in this context of internet happenings, Kirsche happens to be leaning right-wing, and Anna Valens happens to be leaning left-wing, but that doesn't really matter. What matters is truth.
It doesn't matter. You can be a Christian who's, not just Christian, you can be someone who's left-leaning, you can be someone who's right-leaning. It doesn't matter. Your character matters. Yes, your politics could be a part of your character. They're not your whole identity, though, is what I'm saying.
False. What matters is liars and people who tell the truth. So it is more...
That is what matters. That's what matters. It's lie against the truth. You can't associate lie with just Democrat. You can't associate truth with just Republican. Same thing, vice versa. Okay? Truth does not give a shit about your political leanings. Okay? Aletheia does not, the spirit Aletheia does not care. She doesn't care about what politics you have. At the end of the day, Aletheia cares if you're being honest, if you are speaking truth to power. She cares that if you're representing reality in the best to your abilities. You don't have to be perfect. I'm not perfect, and sometimes, I can be lazy and hypocritical. What matters is the truth, not which political side you're on.
A truth versus bollocks thing. That is the difference between cancel culture and consequence culture. When the charges are true, it is consequence culture. When the charges are false, it is cancel culture. That's why this lay both sides bad is a middle ground fallacy. Sure, sometimes there is some truth in the middle between two sides, but it's entirely also possible for one side to be completely full of it, while the other side is completely correct. And plus, in this particular...
That's true, but... A lot of the times I think there is nuance, though. Like, you can't just have it black and white always.
Example, there's really just an additional layer of disgust in the cancel culture here between Kirche and Anna Valens. Because when you consider the context that it's a mainstream corporate journalist of a major publication trying to ruin the livelihood of people who hold significantly less power than they do. And also
it's such an asshole move to do. Like, because you know that you're in a position of authority that's greater than, let's say, like a streamer. Yet you're going to consciously decide to shit on someone and to call them a Nazi, to frame them, to take away their livelihood, all because they disagree with your politics. That's absolutely disgusting. That should never happen. This is the degeneracy of the ages, guys. We are living in the most degenerate time right now.
Considering the context that we live in with big tech's largely unnatural monopolies, what Anna Valens did, or really in this case we should say attempted, was just in general a really evil thing to do. When you've got the cathedral and all of its corruption on your side, and you try to abuse that to destroy the life of somebody based again entirely on fallacious allegations, the whole thing just kind of leaves...
True. This stuff also happens in the church. I'm gonna admit it. It happens with Christians too, okay? We're not in... So it doesn't matter. Biases, happen on all sides. And, as someone who's just, a teenager, 16, I'm still learning a lot. And, I really would like to learn. Because I want to make content that speaks truth. And I know I'm not perfect at it. I know sometimes I know there's times I know I could be full of myself. But I really do, I think have a passion for this, so I just thank everyone who's supporting me. I'm thankful for these guys. Yeah, that's gonna be it for today.